The second season of the Netflix Castlevania series was released at the end of October, and it did a great job of expanding on the characters, themes, and emotions introduced in the first season. While the series displayed great restraint in the fan service department, it was full of Easter eggs and references to the Castlevania video game series and other media. In this video, I'm going to go over all the Easter eggs and references I noticed. Keep in mind, I'm not going to cover the characters or references introduced in the first season of the series, as I cover the basic characters of Season 1 in my Castlevania trailer breakdown, and other channels have covered Season 1 up the wazoo. Fair warning, this video contains spoilers for the Castlevania series Season 2, and some Castlevania games. So, let's get started. I know these are vampire soldiers, but those hoods make them look like the quote zombies unquote that appear in the first Castlevania game and many others throughout the Castlevania game series.
Hector, Isaac.
The Forge Masters, Hector and Isaac, are references to two characters that appear in Castlevania Curse of Darkness, and its manga adaptation of the same name. In this 2005 game, the characters are known as Devil Forge Masters, sorcerers of black magic and alchemy who can summon creatures of darkness, weapons, and resurrect the dead. Both Hector and Isaac are said to have served Dracula during the events of Castlevania III Dracula's Curse, on which the Netflix series is loosely based. However, during these events, Hector betrayed Dracula, allowing Trevor Belmont to destroy him. 3 years later, Hector's wife is murdered by his former colleague, Isaac, who stayed loyal to Dracula, and Hector becomes unwittingly involved in a plot to resurrect the great vampire. The hammer Hector uses in the animated series also looks a little like his warhammer from Curse of Darkness, but it's much smaller and used for magic rather than smashing stuff.
I like boats. I'm a Viking!
The vampire general Godbrand mentions that he's a Viking, and is played by an actor from the once Viking country of Sweden, Peter Stormare.
I am Carmilla.
The character of Carmilla is no stranger to the Castlevania universe. However, she is based on the title character of the classic vampire novel, Carmilla, by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, a novel that predates Bram Stoker's Dracula novel by 26 years. The character makes appearances in many Castlevania games, starting with the sequel to the original game, Castlevania II Simon's Quest, although in that game she doesn't resemble her character in the series at all, and is more of a creepy floating mask thing, a reference to the mask the character wears to masquerade parties in the novel. Carmilla didn't get the fully embodied treatment until Castlevania Rondo of Blood, where she appears naked and riding a skull, and later became a full-bodied and very voluptuous character in Castlevania Judgment. Her backstory is expanded on in even greater detail in the Castlevania Lords of Shadow series, in which she is one of the titular Lords of Shadow, although that game is considered non-canon to the standard series. Alucard uses his sword teleport, a move from Symphony of the Night. This bird creature and bat creature are a duo known as Slogra and Gabon. The pair appears in many Castlevania games, starting with Super Castlevania IV, in which they are two of the three final bosses Simon Belmont must face before facing Dracula. This launching attack is a reference to an attack first performed by the pair in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Given that this creature can breathe fire, it resembles the Hellhound mini-boss from Castlevania Bloodlines.
I think it was a Leon Belmont who entered the region first.
Trevor mentions Leon Belmont, an ancestor and 11th century knight who appears in the game Castlevania Lament of Innocence. Leon is said to be the oldest known Belmont according to the timeline of longtime Castlevania producer Koji Igarashi. The Lords of Shadow game series presents Gabriel as the earliest known Belmont, but again it's considered non-canon and separate from the standard timeline. In this scene we also see a portrait of Leon wearing knightly robes, a reference to his backstory in Lament of Innocence, and we see the portrait again in episode 7. This is without a doubt the craziest Easter egg in the series. This display case contains a number of items, and below most of these items you can see a number. The numbers correspond to the Symphony of the Night bestiary, or enemy data list. You can't see all the numbers, but you can assume them based on the pattern, and they all seem to match up. So to go over all these items and their corresponding enemies in Symphony of the Night, let's start with the left case, then move to the right. First we have number 16, the bones and boomerang of a Skelerang, number 17, a Thornweed, number 18, the feet of Gabon, who we saw earlier, number 19, the remaining skull of a ghost, number 20, a marionette, number 21, the skull and spear tip of a Slogra, who we also saw earlier, number 22, the two heads of a Diplocephalus, number 23, the preserved body of a flea man, number 24, the iconic Medusa head. Then skipping ahead to the other case, we have number 28, the helmet and plate of a Plate Lord, number 29, a stone rose, aka man-eating flower, number 30, the axe and helmet of an Axe Knight, number 31, the horns and hooves of a Cthulhu, no relation to the Lovecraft character, number 32, the bones and bow of a Bone Archer, number 33, a Bone Pillar, number 34, the costume of Alucard's doppelganger, number 35, an owl, and finally number 36, a pile of phantom skulls. Oh boy, that was a lot of Easter eggs for one shot that only lasted a few seconds.
My god.
In this shot, we see the skeleton of a white dragon, aka a Skeledragon or Bone Dragon. This potion is definitely a super potion, an item that restores all HP points, and the rest all resemble standard potion shapes from the Castlevania games. On this shelf we can see some winged boots, an item that increases a character's running speed in several games, and behind it a monster tome, an item that allows you to see enemy data. On this shelf we see what looks like an evil hand, a standard enemy throughout the games, and below it is a blue crystal or blue orb. This display case contains another Medusa head. We also see the best projectile weapon in the game series, the Cross, which appears in the first Castlevania game, although it was called a boomerang in that game. Then we can see a stopwatch, which is a sub-weapon used in many Castlevania games to freeze time, and a peeping eye at the bottom. On the right shelf there is another Bone Archer, and below that some holy water, another standard sub-weapon projectile. Trevor finds the Morning Star, an iconic power-up to the Vampire Killer Whip that first appeared in the original Castlevania game, and then pretty much every Castlevania game featuring a Belmont.
Little vampire, little parasite.
This scene illustrates how tall Dracula is, a feature that is pretty exaggerated in many of the Castlevania games.
But Dracula respects my skills, and the human world cast me out long ago.
This castle bridge is very similar to the bridge stage in the original Castlevania game, and several other bridge stages in the game series.
It was a magic mirror.
Also known as distance mirrors.
Both Dracula and Sypha use a magic mirror, aka Distance Mirror, which is a reference to a variety of mirror-like items in the Castlevania games. Sometimes mirrors are hazards or serve as portals to transport enemies, as in Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance and Aria of Sorrow. However, in the Lords of Shadow series, the Mirror of Fate is a powerful tool capable of revealing the past or future and transporting characters.
So you're trying to make him prove himself again and again by constantly provoking him.
This book just fell over, or maybe it's a subtle reference to the flying books in many Castlevania library stages. Okay, fine, I'm reaching a bit with this one. This shot is a reference to the real Vlad Tepes's habit of impaling people.
When I say what, that doesn't mean I would like to ask even more questions.
Trevor could have taken the cross, but instead he takes the daggers, the worst projectile sub-weapon from the Castlevania games.
Brayla.
Dracula's castle remote control is the polyhedron object that you find in save rooms in Symphony of the Night. These creatures appear to be a Minotaur from Castlevania Rondo of Blood and other games, a Malphus, an enemy that first appeared in Symphony of the Night, but it looks much more like a Crow Witch Malphus from Lords of Shadow. Trevor calls this thing a Fire Drake, but it could be inspired by the Flame Demon from Symphony of the Night and other games. And I have no idea who this blindfolded guy is supposed to be, so let me know if you do. In this scene, Alucard uses his sword like a sword familiar in Symphony of the Night.
Begin.
The background music is Bloody Tears, the most iconic piece of music from the Castlevania game series. Composed by Kenichi Matsubara, it was first heard in Castlevania II Simon's Quest, and then used many times throughout the game series. Alucard uses his wolf form, an ability that first appeared in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It allows Alucard to run faster and leap higher. Sypha uses her Frozen Crystal attack, aka the Blue Splash. This is one of the character's 3 spells in Castlevania 3, along with a Flame attack and Electric Spheres. There is also a version of the Blue Splash in other Castlevania games, like Dawn of Sorrow and Harmony of Despair.
And I have had enough!
Dracula attacks using his Dark Inferno, an alternate attack to his standard Hellfire in Castlevania Rondo of Blood and other Castlevania games. After Dracula is destroyed, there is nothing left but the Ring of Vlad, one of the relics Simon must collect in Castlevania II: Simon's Quest. The final shot of Episode 7 is a lot like one of the 4 potential end screens in Castlevania 3: Dracula's Curse, only the castle doesn't collapse.
So will you come with me?
I wouldn't know where else to go.
Trevor and Sypha get cozy like they do in the Sypha ending of Castlevania 3. Alucard starts crying because the series didn't cut to 200 years later when Simon Belmont must defeat Dracula, or even 20 years later if they're going to make Trevor and Sypha Simon's parents, like in the Lords of Shadow game series. Or maybe that's why I started crying. On a more serious note, the series may do a version of the Curse of Darkness storyline before getting to Simon. But does that really need to be a whole season? I want to see Simon already! Well, those are all the references and Easter eggs I noticed, but I'm sure I missed some. If you noticed a reference to the Castlevania games or other media in Season 2 of the animated series, please let me know what it is in the comments below. Make sure to like this vid and subscribe for more videos that delve into your favorite movies and series. Or support the channel by donating to the Story Dive Patreon. Until the next season of the Netflix Castlevania series, when they better show Simon.
Who am I?
You're Simon Belmont, the vampire hunter.
No, I'm definitely not him.